But what's happening now is because AI technology is becoming so advanced, even data that's being anonymized can sometimes be reverse engineered to re identify the individual. That's becoming a huge security risk as well.
Baker Botts, LLP, provides podcasts for educational purposes only. They are not legal advice and are not intended to establish an attorney client relationship. This communication may constitute attorney advertising.
Welcome to AI Counsel Code. The AI Counsel Code is here to keep you up to date on all AI legal issues arising in the modern business frontier. I'm your host, Maggie Welsh, and today I have a very special guest joining us, Nicole Spence, who is brand counsel for Generative AI Tools at IBM. Nicole and I have been talking about AI and legal issues related to AI for a number of years, so I'm very happy to have her here today. Hi, Nicole. Thanks for joining us.
Hi, Maggie. Thank you for inviting me today. My title is Brand Counsel for Generative AI Tools at IBM. I've been at that role for about 2 years, but I've been at IBM for about 8 years, going on 9 years. What does that mean? Mainly, as the brand counsel, I oversee the generative AI tool portfolio at IBM globally. So, if there's any issues with the tooling as far as releasing a new release of a particular AI tool like Watson AI, whether there's be an issue relating to IP, privacy, marketing, or even employment, I handle those issues. And if needed, get someone who's more of an expert in that role to help with a particular issue. So it's kind of like I usually say I'm like the gatekeeper of the generative AI tools at IBM.
Awesome. And I want to talk about some of those issues today with you. When we first met, I remember you giving a really nice description about data and how data is related to AI. AI is everywhere, and really at the core is the data that these AI models are trained on. So, why don't you start off by telling us, for folks that might not understand, the importance of how to be thinking about data in these AI systems?
Of course. So, at its simplest form, AI, or also known as artificial intelligence, refers to the ability of computer systems to perform tasks that require human intelligence, such as pattern recognition, decision making, problem solving. But for those AI systems to perform these particular tasks, they need to be trained on a copious amount of data. Think of an AI system as a student. The more quality educational resources that a student has, that's ebooks, online learning modules, traditional textbooks, and examples, that student is better able to understand a subject and apply it in real life. So, data pretty much is those sources that a student is learning in order to make those real life decisions and apply it to everyday situation. Similarly, the more diverse or accurate or comprehensive the data system is trained on, the more robust and effective that system can become. Hence the phrase garbage in, garbage out. Good quality data in, you get good quality data out. If you put garbage into that tool, you're going to get garbage out of that tool. This data also can be not just text, it can be a wide variety of things. It could be text, as I said, and also it can be used in various different areas. But that's the gist of how data and AI are interconnected.
That makes perfect sense. And it brings us to some of the legal challenges that you and I face daily with respect to these AI systems. When we're talking about the copious amounts of data, one of the things that a lot of lawyers immediately think of is privacy. So, why don't you talk about some of the key concerns with respect to privacy and collecting and using all the data for these AI models?
Privacy is probably one of those immediate and significant concerns in the legal community when it relates to AI and data. And I'm going to touch on, there's a lot of issues. I'm going to touch on the main five issues here because I think these are the main ones that we see more common in the legal frontier. The first one is informed consent. Do individuals truly understand what their data is being used for and that data is being used to train AI models? There has been a huge movement in this area where individuals, or we also call them data subjects, have actually requested that data is not being used to train models. And that's been a big movement as far as informed consent is concerned. Number two is repurposing of data. For example, If an individual provides their data for one purpose, can the data be reused for a second purpose, depending on the scope of that informed consent? Meaning, if that informed consent is very broad, could it be used for multiple purposes, or do you have to get consent for another use? The third one is de-identification and re-identification of data. So that's a very loaded area when you have data that's very, such as someone's social security number. That data can be anonymized, meaning it can be sequenced in a way where it can't trace my name, Nicole Spence, to my social security number. That would be like a random sequence of numbers I'd be replaced for the actual social security number in that case. But what's happening now is because AI technology is becoming so advanced, even data that's being anonymized can sometimes be reverse engineered to re identify the individual. That's becoming a huge security risk as well. The fourth issue is data ownership. So, who really owns the data, especially when you have user generated content that feeds into those data systems, knowing exactly who's the owner of the data that also relates to the quality of the data and making sure you're getting informed consent from the right data owner. Number five, which is a big one that I think we've all probably dealt with in some way, shape, or form in our everyday lives, is data and security breaches. That's when vast repositories of personal information becomes vulnerable to nefarious actors or malicious actors and hackers. I think we've all seen that we have situations where we'll get an email saying that wherever we're putting our data in, whether it be the credit union, that data has been compromised. And that would be an example of a data or security breach.
That's great, and I love the 5 key points to be thinking about. That's really helpful for practical purposes. In terms of the data that you're talking about and training on numerous amounts of data sets, another key issue that a lot of lawyers and consumers and the industry is thinking about is how good is that data? You mentioned earlier about the garbage in, garbage out. What are some legal implications that in house attorneys should be thinking of in terms of good quality data? What are some issues that might creep up if you're not using good quality data?
Mhm. Yeah, the data bias is a huge critical point in the legal community. And as you said, rightfully so, garbage in, garbage out. AI systems are only as good as the data they're trained on. If you have training data that reflects current or historical societal biases, such as disproportionately representing a certain demographic or historical prejudices, that AI model will learn and perpetuate those biases. Very simple example, think of a self-driving vehicle. If that vehicle is trained to avoid people when driving and not trained to avoid pets, that system may think, okay, I see a person, I'm going to avoid the person, but may see a pet and then they can drive through the pet. Vice versa, a system being trained on a pet may see pets and say, okay, I have to avoid the pet, but may not see a person the same way and think they can drive through a person. So that has some huge implications. I'm just using as an example to explain the training piece of it. But kind of going into the nitty gritty of the bias piece, imagine an AI system that's used for loan application that discriminate against a certain racial group, or an AI system used in hiring that screens out female candidates. This could all lead to claim of discrimination, violating anti-discrimination laws. And within the past couple of years in the US, we've seen a lot of legislation on AI accountability, pretty much going towards minimizing the impact of this AI bias in some critical applications, such as mortgage approvals and hiring processes and even healthcare. This discussion has become broader on a global level because obviously we're dealing with in the US, but the rest of the world is dealing with these same AI accountability issues. And it's seen more as a debate on who's really responsible when things go wrong, when an AI system actually does have a biased decision. That's the person or a group of people who developed the particular AI system. Is the deployer the people who are using the system that was developed by the developer, or the data provider, which is the person who provided that data or group that provided that data that was used to train the AI system? So it becomes a very complex web of who did it and who is responsible, where the liability begins or ends in those cases.
And has any decisions been made in those cases in terms of liability?
I think there's a lot still open ended. There's nothing really concrete at this point. In some cases, a developer has been the group heavily involved in litigations, but the deployer, if they're using it for high risk activity in which the developer never intended, can also have implications. And also, if the data that's being used to train that model was somehow incorrect or had the bias or was problematic in some way, they also could be caught into the same web of liability. As of now, no one group that is as put it singled out per se are the one who's solely responsible. But I will say the developer is involved in a lot of the complaints at this point. Even in legislations, they've been pointed to the most.
And you mentioned legislation. So, what are you seeing in terms of legal frameworks, either existing or what might be up and coming that might be able to help tackle some of these AI legal challenges?
Legislation is hard. I think part of it is when you're thinking about a privacy standpoint, legislation, that's where a lot of this is bottling up. Unfortunately, within the US, there is no specific framework we're working with. It's a very state by state, the subject matter by subject matter. HIPAA laws brought into this as well. Certain states or cities have their own individual laws that have also been brought into this. There isn't one particular group that's the main one we look at. You have to look at it in various different areas. For example, for privacy laws, you have GDPR in Europe. Other states are very heavily involved within the US, like COPA is another big one as well that relates to children and safety of children online. Then anti-discrimination laws used for the AI bias piece of this. Then you have product liability laws, which typically focus on AI driven products like the self driving vehicles we discussed, will be product liability based. On an international level, you have organizations like the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, that's called the OECD, and the UN Educational and Scientific and Cultural Organization, the UNESCO, and they're developing ethical frameworks for AI to deal with future legal frameworks. But the big area has been the EU. The EU, as you know, had GDPR, and they're also the leaders in the AI Act, which they're proposing right now, still going through its regulatory process. But that's a way of classifying AI systems based on risk levels. The EU also has the Data Act that deals with the treatment of data and how data can be used. And so that's also, there's like kind of two different laws, but they're very interconnected. You have China and a lot of other countries that started their own set of AI acts as well that have tackled AI in various ways. Not as comprehensively as the EU Act, but definitely tackling it in different arenas. We can't forget the US. The US is a little all over the place right now because there's no general federal law that encompasses everything. We did recently have an executive order that's going to be used now to find a way to handle AI as far as AI action plan moving forward. And that may set the tone moving forward with AI on a more holistic federal level. While additional laws are probably needed, we're not starting from a blank slate. Just like we saw with GDPR in Europe, on the privacy standpoint, you're going to eventually see a lot of other countries piggybacking off the EU AI Act and the EU Data Act, creating very similar flavors within their own jurisdiction. We have to keep abreast of what's going on there to connect the dots if you're working with a global organization like IBM.
Something to keep our eyes on for sure. And I can't let you go without talking about intellectual property. It was a hot topic in the news for a while and it's calmed down a little bit, but I think it's still one of the big issues that counsel are talking about when they think about AI systems. So, what are you seeing in terms of intellectual property? What are the big issues when you're talking about AI and IP?
IP is still definitely a hot area in AI law, in particular, looking at the rights that can be granted in AI system. So, for example, there's been a lot of talk about who owns the AI, who owns what the AI generates. Is it the author, the inventor, or the AI system itself? One thing that's been very clear on a global level is that AI does not have legal personhood. So it really can't own property. That's why a lot of those IP rights would fall more into the bucket of the human creator or the inventor and not necessarily an AI system. There was a whole sort of litigation on this, which was huge in the patent arena in particular. And they also had some stuff in the copyright arena in which they tried to through legislation and litigation to try to present the case of an AI system creating something separate of human oversight which should be owned by the AI system. There's been a lot of pushback on that globally, where as it stands right now, the AI system is not necessarily the owner of anything that it generates or the output. But there's still a lot of arguments. Some say the author and the inventor should be the ones that are considered the owners since they facilitated the creation of this particular idea or output. A human being has the idea of conception versus an AI system does not have that. Others say we should create some kind of separate umbrella in which a user who provides significant creative output can have a claim in some way. So, kind of making that area for the AI system. But with all that being said, one other concept that's kind of been floating around with that is machine generated works, especially in the copyright arena, in which they're trying to create some kind of distinction where certain things are given copyright protection, for example, if it's clearly derived from the human versus what's machine generated and that's separate, it doesn't get that copyright protection. So, not in essence giving copyright to everything, but really by going piece by the actual creative work to see exactly who did what or what did what. This is being grappled on a legislative level, on a litigation level, and also within the various federal agencies like the USPTO and the Copyright Office at this juncture. So it's still a very unsettled area, but it's definitely a hot area right now.
Thanks, Nicole. It's so nice to have your insights and practical approaches to some of these really challenging legal issues in the AI space. Do you have any final thoughts for our listeners? Any takeaways that they should be thinking about as they approach AI?
One thing I want everyone to think about is as lawyers try to grapple with these issues, these AI systems are evolving in their complexity to the point now we have different types of AI, like agelic AI, which is a really new area as well, in which it takes what we consider traditional AI systems and generative AI systems a step further. And now the actual AI system or agent is able to plan, reason, act, and complete very complex tasks with minimal human oversight. So I say all this to say, as we are grappling with all these legal issues, technology is advancing to the point where we're going to be grappling with some very different issues in the near future.
Thanks, Nicole, and thanks for sharing your insights and being with us today. Thank you to our listeners for listening to AI Council Code. We're glad that you joined us, and stay tuned for additional podcasts and more insights on AI legal issues from Baker Botts.
Thank you for listening to this Baker Bots podcast. Baker Bots has the experience, knowledge, and people to address our clients' most significant legal issues. For more information on Baker Bots practices, please visit us at bakerbots.com. This presentation is provided by Baker Bots LLP for educational and informational purposes only. It is not legal advice and is not intended to establish an attorney-client relationship. Under the rules of certain jurisdictions, this communication may constitute attorney advertising.